Beyond the Gates spoilers tease that Vanessa accidentally lets slip a dangerous piece of news into the wrong ears, and in that slip, the slow gears of a careful conspiracy begin to turn with the kind of quiet, lethal precision that makes ordinary life snap like glass. She comes out of the police station with her cheeks still flushed from the fluorescent lights and the interrogation room chill, an aftertaste of coffee and stale paperwork on her tongue. Her hands tremble around the strap of her purse because whatever she is carrying inside is heavier than it should be, not just the keys and a lipstick, but the knowledge that someone she loved, someone married to someone else, someone dead, has become the axis of other people's suspicions. She runs because fear and longing are twin engines. She runs because Joey is waiting, because when a life has threaded itself around a secret, the need to touch that secret, to feel the pulse under the skin, becomes overwhelming. Vanessa's breath lightens as she rounds the corner toward the low, squat building where Joey keeps his small empire of rumpled men and whispered favors. In the dim light of the alley, Joey is two faces at once: the lover who once folded her hair behind her ear, and the man who can make a body disappear without a raised voice. He watches her pause short in front of him, the way a predator watches something that might still run. She doesn't say hello. She can't. She floods him with words instead, hurried and clumsy, hopes and excuses colliding into each other. Jacob thinks she starts, and then all reserve evaporates. Jacob thinks Doug's death might not have been an accident. The name hangs in the air like a splinter. Joey's eyes do not widen with surprise, they narrow. An accident is a tidy thing to talk about, an insurance word for a life gone wrong. Suspicion is a different temperature. Suspicion is wet and persistent. Vanessa thinks she is telling him because she owes him the truth, because her conscience demands transparency from the man she has been betraying in secret. She thinks, selfishly and unbearably, that confessing will somehow protect Doug's memory from stains, will align her interior moral compass. She is wrong. Jacob, the detective with the narrow jaw and the constant habit of rubbing the bridge of his nose when he is tired, has not only noticed anomalies in the estate where Doug fell, he has catalogued them with the painfully patient mind of someone who must order the chaotic world into lines. There were footprints that matched no guest list, cigarette butts whose brands do not belong to households of the dead, smudges of a cleaner's solvent on the banister that were never paid for, and a wine glass that someone scrubbed a little too zealously. The grief scene had been too clean in the wrong places and too messy where a person would clean if they weren't covering a trace. Doug's been propped up, Jacob tells Vanessa with the acute tenderness of a man trying not to say the word murderer. Stuff was set. Someone wanted it to look like an accident. Vanessa repeats this, breathless and terrified, certain in her chest that the hidden knowledge will be a bond between them, that it will keep Joey on a leash made of gratitude. She doesn't see the flicker cross his face when she details the exact things Jacob told her. She cannot fathom that the specificity, the brands, the peculiar order of objects, the mention of how the living room lamp had been moved to obscure a set of scratches is the sort of information that prosecutors and county coroners tuck into a file to catch a lie. To Joey, it is an instruction manual at worst, or a map at best. If anyone could take Jacob's careful inventory and make it vanish, it would be someone like Joey, a man who understands the artistry of disappearance. She leaves him with that raw confession, her fingers still hovering for a second on his sleeve as if she can press the warmth of her heartbeat into his skin and make it stay. She walks back into the thin light of the street like a woman who has given away a secret she thought would save her. What she doesn't know, what she doesn't allow herself to suspect, is that her words will travel into the very fabric of the plot being woven around her, a leak where she meant to plug the hole. Across town, Randy is playing cards like he always does, bright, abrasive. A man who laughs too loud and brags too often. Randy is the kind of man who thinks a debt is an insult rather than a triangle of numbers. He owes and he gambles, and he tells anyone who will listen that alliances are only worth what they pay right now. He is not dangerous in the way Joey is. He doesn't plan, he burns. He seems, to everyone, irreplaceable in his volatility. "You think I'd turn on Joey?" he says to anyone who will hear, palming a cigarette with a casual contempt. "I eat betrayal for breakfast." It's bravado. It is also, as Vanessa will soon learn, easily disposed of. Joey hears that bravado and feels a cold satisfaction. Loyalty is a commodity he trades in cheap sometimes, priceless at others. He cannot abide a loose end, and Randy, with his love of loud truths, has become a potential laceration. Joey doesn't believe Randy's promise not to betray him. Whether he does or not does not matter. He gives the order because caution has teeth. Marcel, who answers to Joey with a nod and the kind of efficiency that suggests he has spent too many years polishing knives, is told, "Take care of Randy. Make it look like he killed himself." Make it look like he killed himself is an architecture to be built, the careful placing of plausibility over the rubble of violence. Marcel thinks in logistics and smoke. He studies the ways a scene can be made to speak the truth no one uttered. He collects props like a stagehand selects curtains, a bottle of pills, a cheap pistol bought in cash, an envelope with a few dollars and a torn receipt in it. He fakes the last phone call, then deletes the record. Poor craftsmanship in data can still be clever at the edges. He knows that the slimness of the will is what people will buy. They will want a tidy narrative where a man who committed a sin could only end one way, with his own hand. Randy is taken in the middle of the night in a manner that is mercifully quick. Blood does not spray across ornate wallpaper because they wrap him and lay him where they will later say he chose to finish it. When Marcel calls Joey to tell him it's done, his voice has the habitual flattening of someone who has performed cruelty and gone on with the day. Joey does not celebrate, he merely notes. The orchestration is too routine now. He tells Marcel to stage the computer to write the confession that will make the paper record look like a restive conscience eating its maker alive. Meanwhile, Jacob returns to his office not knowing the day will bend the way it does. He is a man who believes in the arc of evidence, that if you follow where it leans, the truth will bloom like a scandal in the sun. He answers a call from the dispatcher, a neighbor's voice thin and anxious telling him about a body. The address is familiar in a way that makes his stomach drop. He drives like someone who has run into the dark before, lights passing like knives through his windshield. The scene they find is quiet in the way murderers like to be quiet, too much silence. The hum of a refrigerator hushing the house. The paramedics move with the same mechanical dignity any death requires. Randy is on the kitchen floor in a heap that neither concedes nor shouts. The placement of his body is almost restful. Jacob is given a moment to look, a professional courtesy he never surrenders. He sees the open laptop on the counter, the screen bearing a document, a will, raw and bristling with absolution. The document is the work of someone trying to be honest in a scrawl of last things. It says Randy took Doug's life because Doug took everything money funneled into games, fingers that should have been extended to a friend instead withdrawn into a thief's fist. It reads like the recrimination of a head full of gambling and anger. It ends with lines that are explicit. "I killed him. I couldn't live with it. I'm sorry." There is an elegance to the self-incrimination that makes juries nod and prosecutors sigh. Jacob reads it twice because a confession on a screen is something his job wants to accept. Confessions and inquiries. They are neat. But Jacob is not so easily satisfied. He has learned to ask himself the small, stubborn question after every neat thing. Who benefits? In that question lives every murder he has untangled and every lie he has peeled like an old bandage. He walks the room with eyes trained at angles the camera does not think to photograph. The bottle of pills has fingerprints in the wrong place. The smear of coffee on the counter is still too warm for the time of death given. The keyboard shows no smudges where Randy's fingers would have been if he had typed his last words in a rush. The will's file history might hold the secret, when it was last saved, by whom, and from what machine. But metadata is ephemeral if someone knows how to scrub it. Jacob thinks of all that as he bends to look at the laptop screen. There is that little cruel sign of perfection in the composition of the typed lines. They are too clean, too literate for a man whose handwriting critics would have called a curse. He notes it and feels its razor-thin promise. Vanessa, in the hours after her visit to Joey, goes home with her mind a jumble of good intentions and bad timing. She cannot sleep. She plays the conversation over like a song stuck in a loop. She tries to convince herself that everything she said to Joey was necessary, that truth protects the weak and the guilty alike. But when she hears the news of Randy's death, the text message arriving like a small, merciless stone. She is a woman who recognizes the outline of her own confession inside it, and panic makes her breath shallow and fast. She reaches for her phone to call Jacob, to tell him she said things, fearing not the legal repercussions but the moral ones, that she may have been a herald to a grim crowd. Her fingers hover. She does not call. Fear of implicating herself or of revealing the affair restrains her, or perhaps she is already too far lost in loyalties to find the right handhold. Back at Randy's house, the scene becomes an exhibit of human intent. The deputies chalk off the room with polite efficiency. A forensics tech in a blue suit takes fingerprints. Another places little numbered flags like tombstones for small truths, a pill bottle, a handwritten note, the plastic wrapper of a cheap laundry detergent. Jacob watches them and thinks it all too staged, like a set that has been dressed for consumption. The will is printed now, a physical witness to a sanitized crime, and Jacob collects it as evidence. He slides it into a folder the way one tucks a dangerous thing into the mouth of a sleeping beast. At dinner that evening, Joey sits with the top of the world in his lap. Control tastes like something sweet and metallic. He thinks of the police moving around the city like pawns he has watched before, and he thinks of Vanessa and how her confession could have been a net to catch him, a beam strong enough to trip him, had she been any less naive. He dials Marcel and tells him to burn certain threads. Make sure the laptop's file history is fucked beyond hope. Take care of the receipts, and don't forget to put Randy where I said. People will believe a man crushed by his own guilt before they believe he was pushed. Marcel answers with a terse grunt and the line goes dead, the conversation a dusting of finality. Jacob does not leave it at the easy acceptance of a will on a screen. He is a man for whom patterns are everything, and this pattern makes his jaw work. He asks for the preliminary toxicology to be expedited, for Randy's bank records, for his phone records. He wants to know with the patience of a man who knows time is a patient witness. When he taps at the laptop's keyboard to check the file's properties, a detail he notices with a detective's tiny sense for wrongness has simply not thought to remove the small sticker on the underside of the machine, a serial number that ties the computer to a local pawn shop's inventory system. He makes a note. He calls Vanessa under the pretense of routine follow-up. The conversation is thin. He asks about her memory of the afternoon before Doug's death, about small things, whether she remembers the color of Doug's scarf, whether she remembers a visitor leaving at dusk. Vanessa answers, but her voice is brittle with the strain of the night's news. Jacob registers that she is on edge. He suggests almost as a kindness and almost as a maneuver that she give him anything that was said in private, anything that a lover might have shared. Vanessa teeters between loyalty and the need to unburden. She gives him more than she should, details about conversations, the timing of certain visits, the names of those who came to the house when Doug slept. She thinks she is helping. She is handing him ammunition. She is also handing ammunition to a man across town who has a different use for weapons. On the other side, Joey uses those details like a man arranging the last corner of a painting to ensure light falls a certain way. He tells Marcel to plant a small piece of evidence in Randy's car, a receipt in Randy's handwriting that references a debt Doug owed, a detail they will claim proves motive. It is a tiny touch, but in the theater of murder, tiny touches make the drama convincing. Marcel goes about it like a craftsman. He picks a day-old newspaper to smudge the paper, drips a small hint of engine oil on the corner to make the note look as if it has been there. He sets the car key where Randy's hand would reach. Then he smiles, the small flash of a man who has done this before and found it always pays. Back at the morgue, Jacob is not entirely satisfied. He requests a more careful inspection of Randy's body and an analysis of the scene's timeline. He has learned that a manufactured narrative depends on many small lies stitched together seamlessly. Say one obvious falsehood and the rest can be coaxed into place, but one small inconsistency will split the story at its seam. He finds one such seam when the lab reports back with a detail. The residue on the gun handle is inconsistent with Randy's typical skin oils, the kind of microtrace an amateur would miss but a sleuth reads as an indicator of another hand. The toxicology shows traces of a paralytic that stops breathing slowly rather than the fast dissolution a man would choose to end his life. Jacob's notebook becomes a map of doubt. He underlines the word staged and circles it twice because he wants to remind himself not to be seduced by the tidy ending. Vanessa, who has been trying to convince herself she did the right thing by confiding in Joey, starts to see the reflection of her words as part of a mirror breaking. She notices small things again she had previously ignored: stray mud on the flower bed near Doug's back entrance, the smell of cheap cologne in Doug's study that is not the brand he wears, a glove in the trash can that had been too carefully wrapped in a plastic bag. Small things she had walked past like a woman avoiding pebbles suddenly jostle her into attention. When she tries to call Joey, she finds he is quiet. He tells her only what he needs to, which is nothing. He is the center of the circle now. She begins to be afraid not only for the dead man and the man she loves but for herself, a guilty, small terror that washes up inside her like cold seawater. Jacob's investigation expands like a stain in reverse as he picks at threads. He learns about a security camera outside a back alley that had been jaunty with birds but now shows a sliver of a car moving in the dead hour before dawn. The frame is blurred but the timestamp ticks. He orders that the footage be enhanced. He listens again to phone calls and hears a voice in the background of one that could be Marcel's. He knows how to listen to a city. He knows that nothing is silent if you are patient enough to hear it. He sets a trap of his own, a quiet, polite request for the list of guests at the house on the night Doug died. He wants to see who might line up with his new suspicion that no honest grief could have been so rehearsed. The story moves forward with the slow, deliberate terror of a watch winding down. Vanessa feels smaller and more isolated with each passing hour. When Joey meets her in the dim of a bar to talk, he is all casual restraint and polite menace. He asks her, softly, if she understands what has been lost and what remains to be done. She nods, because what else can she do? Her mind reels with the possibility that she has become the unwitting instrument in a cover-up. She imagines evidence being wiped and memories being bent to shape. She suffers in the way of those who love at the edges of law, not with the hardened shame of a villain but with the thin, trembling guilt of someone who could not see the whole stage for the glare of one small light. Meanwhile, Jacob grows to hate the idea of an entirely closed case. He cannot accept that a man like Randy, who loved noise and company, would disappear so quietly under the finality of his own hand. He has that uncomfortable detective's faith that someone who arranges a living room to look like an accident will sometimes forget to arrange the last detail that makes death believable, the human memory that needs to be turned off. He orders additional fingerprints, asks for data recovery from Randy's phone, and most crucially requests the laptop be forensically examined for metadata and last user logins. It is the kind of bureaucratic insistence that makes enemies in places where men with more to lose than dignity sit and keep watch. Yet there is another hand at work, the colder one that has been making the edges of the conspiracy fit together perfectly. Marcel cleans the places he touched, stuffs Randy's apartment with ordinary things that feel ordinary so the extraordinary will be harder to spot. He rotates the evidence through the stories he and Joey have practiced. He is precise because he does not like accidents, he likes them to feel designed. He knows the police will look for motive and so he gives them a motive. He knows the coroner will look for method, so he suggests the method. He leaves behind a will that reads like a litany of self-loathing. He leaves behind enough to satisfy but not enough to expose. The narrative tightens like a noose, but there is a slackness to it. Truth can still be tugged at if someone has the courage to pull. Jacob feels that tug. He leans into it. He has been a man who learned early in his career that the system likes narratives more than truth, and he hates that. He has scraped at the stories told by neat documents and found rot beneath. He will not let this one be neat. When the coroner's early report returns, its clinical language disguises an unease. There are elements that do not fit the image of a man who killed himself out of a guilty conscience. The angle of the supposed self-inflicted wound gives Jacob a cold, precise picture of somebody else standing over the body. The blood flow has the slow, certain geometry of a man who was placed where his blood would gather easily. The pills in the bottle are not of a dose that would do what the note promises. Data on the laptop shows the file's last saved timestamp to be a clean line, far too clean. It could be erased. Metadata is not a sworn testimony unless someone bothers to check it. But there are always fingerprints, on the plastic wrap, on the bottle cap, in the fallout dust on a windowsill where a hand might have rested. Jacob notes one in particular that is smudged in a way that doesn't match Randy's known habits. This revelation ripples outward. Vanessa hears it in the news and feels the floor tilt under her. Joey reads the headlines like a man calculating risk. He tells Marcel to move quicker. The city shrugs in its various ways. Some passers-by remark on the sordidness of it all as if it is another episode in a soap opera. Others mutter about the poor man who could not face his sins. None of them know the truth, and that knowledge lies like a hot coal between those who do. As the evening lengthens into a more dangerous kind of dusk, Jacob sits alone in his kitchen with the will printed on the table like a grim calendar. He knows a tidy confession is often the product of tidy planning. He knows that somewhere, someone is smiling at how well things have been placed. He also knows, with a detective's stubbornness, that he does not yet know everything. He looks again at the file names, at the slight discrepancy in timestamps, at the serial sticker that ties the laptop to a second-hand sale. He traces the string backward. He begins to smell the edges of a story too big for a single man to hold. He starts to see the shape of it, a lover who slipped in the wrong place and told too many truths, a gangster who commands obedience like a king, a henchman who dresses murder as remorse. The shape is ugly and precise and it hums at the back of his head. With the intrigue mounting, with the police searching for the clearest answers and the most obvious clues, with Vanessa teetering on the edge of guilt and complicity, her confession both weapon and lens. Randy is dead and a will says he killed a man, but wills are slippery things, and death is not the end, just another beginning. Jacob is still unsatisfied, and that's enough to make this evening dangerous, because the unsatisfied detective is a man whose time, memory, and love of truth make him dangerous to those who depend on stories to be believed. The city hums and lights flicker. Vanessa stares out the rain-slicked window and wonders if her words are the spark that sets things off, and Joey counts his options like a player plotting his final move. Jacob, alone with the printed confession and its wrongdoing, knows only that he must dig deeper, and when someone like Jacob decides to dig deeper, the plot has a way of making neat endings messy.